we go. Hopefully we are now live. But considering, there we go, it is now showing on my screen. I'm going to go back to my other screen just so otherwise it does not confuse me. There's a slight delay between the software that I'm using in the preview window and the screen that people can see me through YouTube. So I'm going to ignore the YouTube one. I can see a chat window, so if anybody's got any topics, if anybody shows up in the chat room, drop them in the comment section. So I wasn't sure whether I was going to do a live podcast tonight. Reason being, I've done several this week. I did a podcast earlier on in the week with actress, producer, writer Chloe Tracos, where we talked about the death of cinema and whether cinemas will survive, how they can survive, why they're not surviving, and my point of view, whether the studios actually want cinemas to survive. I'm still under the impression they're not too fussed because they have streaming platforms and they want people to rent movies on VOD. So that is on the YouTube channel, and it will be on the audio podcast feed in probably about a week. So around the 14th of July, that Death of Cinema podcast will drop onto the audio feed. So anybody who listens to the show through Spotify or Amazon Podcasts or wherever the hell you're listening to it from, that'll be there. It is available on video now. I also recorded earlier today, so like 8 hours ago, I started a podcast with the wonderful Stu Miller, who I record with periodically. And we did one show with 2 topics, and I've chopped the video up into 2 halves. So one video was me interrogating Stu about his recent trip to the Download Festival. Now, a lot of people haven't been to Download Festival. I haven't been to Download Festival. I've seen Glastonbury on the TV, and that's pretty much all I know about festivals. And so I asked Mr. Miller a whole bunch of questions about how festivals work, the camping arrangements, the food arrangements, the bathroom arrangements, how the tickets work, where you choose your campsite, all that sort of stuff. So if anybody's never been to a festival and you're actually interested in going to a festival, at some point this week on the FromPage2Screen YouTube channel, that festival, I can't even remember what I called it. I think it's like, if you've never been to Download, watch this, or something along those lines. That video will be on the feed. The other section that we did, which I've chopped up into a separate video, which was supposed to be the main topic of the podcast that Stu and I had arranged, it was the topic that he'd suggested, was that we get together and we talk about our 5 favourite films so far this year, so 2024. So we each toddle away, came back with a list of 5, and we share those recommendations on that. So that's called the Mid-Year Review 2024. So that will also be on the YouTube channel at some point this week. I don't really want to release 2 videos today and then do this one because, you know, you'd get too fat. You'd be too much content, and then what you're going to do for the rest of the week, you'd just be starved of my content. So I'm going to space them out over the next few days. For the audio fans, so if you're listening to this on an audio podcast, the Stu Miller conversation will go out in its entirety. So it'll just be episode 740, I think it'll be. So that'll pop up in the next couple of weeks. It was so much easier when I used to just do the audio podcast. It was because there was no camera. I didn't have to worry about a backdrop. I didn't have to worry about lighting. For those of you who don't know, I've got like 3 lights here, because if I switch them all off, I mean, even if I switch one off, it goes a bit darker. If I switch the other one off, it goes even darker. And if I switch the third one off, then it's pretty moody. So I have, plus it messes with the autofocus on the webcam, which isn't great anyway. With the audio podcast, I could do these things in the dark. I just sit there with a headset on. And there we go. I'm just put a live chat in there. So if anybody's got any questions, type in a live chat. It should pop up on my window. So yeah, with the audio podcast, it was a lot easier. Sitting there with a headset, record, slouch, could read notes, could just turn around while I'm having a conversation. But obviously with video, my memory needs to come into play. I need to remember stuff. So it's a little bit trickier. Plus a little bit more editing. Although with this live one, I think it's kind of getting there. I have little topics that I can bring in and I can bring out. So I can just make that go away. I can make this go away and I can make that come back. So I am getting there. The reason there's no real funky graphics down the side of the screen like I have done on the previous ones is this is generally just going to be a what have I been up to sort of conversation. I was asked about 20 minutes ago what I'm going to talk about on tonight's podcast. My answer was I have no idea. That's how I roll. I generally have no real clue about what I'm going to talk about, but I always manage to come up with something. So it's been a busy week podcasting this week, which means I've got a whole bunch of days off to concentrate on other stuff. There's always lots of other stuff. For me, anyway. None of it paying stuff. It would be nice. Although, a shout out to Mr. John Shelton, who wonderfully threw in £5 to my coffee account earlier on. I'm a cheap date. John knows that. I'm a cheap date. So it made my day that he threw a £5 into my coffee account. So, yeah, thank you, John. John's also got a YouTube channel. I've appeared on one live stream that he and I did where we talked about George Romero, which was great. So, John, if you're listening, I would do more of them because I enjoyed being on your live stream. It's sort of more enjoyable being a guest on somebody's podcast because you just show up, you talk, and then you leave. You go, right, that's my part done, and then you can just go carry on doing whatever you do. If you're the host of one, you've got all the show notes and post-production and all that faff to do. So it is nice sometimes for me to just jump on somebody else's podcast. But John and I think we spoke for like an hour and a half about George Romero and Night of the Living Dead, and so I got to share my George Romero stories with him, which was fun. But yes, so thank you, John, for chucking in my coffee account. For those of you who are wondering what I'm on about a coffee account, this is my subtle way of going, hey, I've got a coffee account, throw some donations in. I've got a credit card bill to pay. And I want to go to events and do stuff and film stuff and put it on the YouTube channel. Anyway, so yes, there's lots for me to do. So what have I been doing this week? Good question. I felt like I've had one of those weeks where I've got nothing done. Even though if I look at all the things I've done quite a lot. I still feel that I'm spinning too many plates and I'm running the risk of them all crashing on the floor. But podcasting's up to date. I've got enough audio podcasts for the next couple of weeks, so I can devote this coming week to some other stuff. What have I got tomorrow? I'm not going to show you my to-do list. Do you know one of the best tools that any creative person can have? It's one of these and one of them. Pen and a notebook, or a pencil and a notebook. I've got all the computer hardware that I need. Big screens, keyboards, webcams, spotlights, everything, mice. But you can never go wrong with a notebook and a pen. And that's pretty much how I do my stuff. So, for example, tomorrow I have got two films to review. One of them a short film, one of them's a feature film. I've already watched the feature film. I just can't tell you A, what it is, or B, what I thought of the film, because the reviews don't get unembargoed, whatever the word is. The embargo is the 8th of July, which is tomorrow. So if I was pre-recording this conversation, then I could tell you and then release the episode tomorrow. But this is going out live, and I don't want the person who sent me the screener to get punched. I will say one of the successes this week was the film that I watched. I was sent by one of the people involved in the film, which is always nice. I always like it when that happens, when somebody approaches me. I'd watched one of their films and I'd shared the review, and then I'd mentioned that I'm looking forward to this other film coming out, and they said, do you want to see if I can get you a screener for it? And I went, that would be amazing. And by the time I woke up the morning after, there was a screener in my inbox, and I watched the film a couple of days later, and am I allowed to say I really enjoyed it? But you know what? I am going to say I really enjoyed it, because you don't know what the film is. You don't know who the person is, so poo. I'm in the process of trying to come up with some new videos to put on the YouTube channel. I mean, these are fine, these sort of hour podcasts or however long this one's going to be. I haven't a clue. And so I've got a lot of film content on there, Q&A panels, interviews. I've got my own little documentaries on there, A Long Way From Somewhere, which is 2007, 2008 travel doc that I did, which is still blows my mind. I did that thing. And then obviously experiencing Comic-Cons on there, a whole bunch of stuff. But I want to try and do like top fives, or nearly it was going to be top tens, but I think top fives are easier. So I'm going to pick a filmmaker or an author or a composer or just somebody, and then I'm going to look through their filmography, musicography, bibliography, whatever, and come up with my personal top five, use still images, and then do a voiceover. But that takes a little bit of prep. And the first one I'm going to be working on is Abel Ferrara. So I've been going through some of Abel's previous works again, and there's also a couple I've not seen that I managed to track down. I think I do already have my top five films of Abel Ferrara, but I'm not quite sure yet. There's a couple I need to revisit. So I'm doing that. I've got some more book videos to do. I was asked about these earlier on. They're not so much book reviews. I can read, and I like reading. I just don't have enough free time to read lots, if that makes sense. What with the movies and the TV shows and the podcasts and all this sort of stuff, I don't really get the time to sit down and read lots of books. So the book videos I've been doing are kind of like, I mean, if you go on the YouTube channel, you'll see them, but they're like, hey, look at this book. This is a cool book. Here's the size of the font. Here's what it looks like. Here's where you could buy it. Here's a quick summary of it. And oh, by the way, look, it's signed. So they're very sort of basic. They're more like showing off geek items that I've got. So I have quite a decent collection of signed books. And so I've been doing some of those this week. I did a Seth Rogen one. I did a Melanie C one. I've done some Whitley Strieber books. So if you go look on the YouTube, my channel, and under playlists, one of them's books. So you'll see the sort of thing that I do on the books. So I've got a few more of those to get done. I have got to delve into my short film, the Mimi documentary that I'm putting together. There is a rough work print of the Mimi short film. Anybody who knows me knows the situation that's going on with that. It's not the easiest thing to sort of get finished, because it's been years in the making and it's still not made. It's all been filmed, well, everything I can film, and I'm pondering to turn it into a documentary about how I tried to make a film, and I didn't. But technically, if I make a documentary, then I did make a film. It's just not what I originally set out to be. So I'm going to look at that this week, the Mimi documentary, and just get a couple of things reviewed. So that's what my plans are for the week. I do have a little sheet of paper saying what I've been up to this week, though. So a video I did last Saturday was a long time in the waiting. Now, I'm a big fan of the Bind Torturecast, which was a horror podcast. I say was, it makes me sad to say was, which was a long-running horror podcast by Chris Lagrest and Luke Raymer. And they used to get together whenever they wanted, at least once a month, and they would chat about a horror movie they'd watched. Sometimes it was a film I'd seen, sometimes a film I hadn't, but I always enjoyed hearing Chris and Luke just chatting about stuff. And so Chris and I kept in touch when he decided to sort of close the doors of the Bind Torturecast. He and I kept in touch because he's been a listener, which I found out for like nearly 10 years. Chris has been listening to me, so fair play to you, Chris, for having the patience of a saint. But we'd never been on a podcast, so with a whole bunch of emails. Chris left a comment in one of my YouTube videos about maybe doing a chat about physical media, and I emailed him back saying, well, why don't we do the podcast about physical media? So I got to see Chris's face for the first time. And it's good. Good face. Glasses, good face, good tasted t-shirts. It's always interesting when you hear somebody talking and you see what they look like. It's just like, that's what you look like. Not a bad thing. Just you build up a picture in your head about what somebody looks like. For some reason, I always thought that Chris would look like Jesse Plemons. I don't know why. Maybe just, I don't know. Who knows? But nope, he looks like Chris, and that's fine. So Chris and I had a chat. It was one of the longest podcasts I've done for a while. It's 2 hours and 18 minutes, which is great. I could have carried on chatting longer than that, but, I'll let him run away. And so that's on the YouTube channel, and that's just gone up on the audio feeds tonight. So Chris will be downloading the podcast going, oh, shit, it's me. And he can just skip it because he was there when he had the conversation. But we chatted about physical media, and we also chatted about his music career. He records under the name of Anirex, and I have a few of his CDs. I still have this one here, from which I was used as a prop last week. And he was telling me all about Bandcamp, and there's this thing called Bandcamp Friday, which is, I believe, the first Friday of every month, where if you buy music from an artist on Bandcamp on that Friday, they get to keep 100% of the profits, whereas normally it's 70%. So these 30% do make up the difference. So something I didn't know. I had no idea about this Bandcamp Friday. Now I do. So if ever I'm going to buy any music from Bandcamp, I know what day of the month I'm going to buy it on. So we had a chat about that. I've been tidying up the YouTube channel. I'm not going to talk about YouTube all the time because that'll alienate the listeners on the audio feeds. But I've been tidying up the YouTube channel after they decided not to monetize me because I was using a whole 2 videos out of 400 that I didn't make, but I did have permission to use. I got rid of those. And then I decided to port all of the travel and the holiday stuff, or at least most of it, over to a new channel from FromPage2Screen Travelog, which you'll find on YouTube. So all of the travel stuff is going to be on a separate channel. So at the minute I have 3 channels. I have this one. I have the FromPage2Screen Trailer Park, which is just movie trailers, mainly indie movie trailers, because that's what I get sent. And then I have the FromPage2Screen Travelog. So it's 3 different channels. I'm not really bothered if you subscribe to the other ones, but this one I would like subscribes to this one, and for people to watch content on this one, because this is the one that does stand the best chance of being monetized when I can actually apply for monetization in September, as long as I've got enough watch hours. I am 2/3 of the way there now, so I've got another 2.5 months or whatever before I have to worry about any of that crap now. So this week I've been watching a whole bunch of movies. I have written them down. That's why I'm peering down at my little show notes. I have finished a Pixar marathon. Now, this was something that we started during the pandemic, to be fair, where we just pick a series of films and then we go, right, well, let's just watch all of those. I'm trying to think of all the series we've done. We did The Hunger Games, so we watched all 4 of the Hunger Games films. There was only 4 out at the time. We watched all of the Psycho movies, so 1, 2, 3, and 4 at the beginning. So we watched those. And then we ended up watching the remake, the Gus Van Sant one, which is okay. I don't quite get the point of doing that, but whatever. Strange remake. And we watched... Do you know what? I can't remember. But we've watched a whole bunch of movie series right the way through. And we've just finished a 27 movie Pixar watch-a-thon. So we started at Toy Story. Actually, we started with the short films that were before Toy Story. And we worked all the way through. And then last night, we watched Elemental, which is the final one that we can watch in our house. Obviously, Inside Out 2 is now out, but we can't watch that at home yet. And we don't get to cinema very often anyway. So 27 movies. An interesting thing about the Pixar films, And obviously this is just an opinion for mine. But we didn't see one that we didn't like. Some were better than others, but there wasn't once that we put a Pixar movie on when we thought, well, that sucked. We were a little bit concerned about Lightyear because we've heard what people were saying about that, going, it sucked, it's terrible, it's easily the worst one. We didn't mind it. It was fine. The previous one that we thought we might be a little bit concerned about was, I think it was Soul. And we put that on, and maybe about 10 minutes into it, we're like, oh, is this the... And then just something happened very early on in the film, and we're like, we're in, got it. Because we knew nothing about the film. And so, yeah, in 27 movies, there hasn't been a bad movie, in our opinion. That's one hell of a run. So, the next franchise that we're going to be doing is 10 films, I believe, and that is the Saw franchise. Now, I've seen some of the Saw movies. I've not seen them all. I've seen Saw 1, so the original Saw, quite a few times. I love that film. It's my favourite of the whole franchise. I'm not in it for blood and guts. I'm in it for the whole... It's set in primarily in one location, i.e. like a manky old bathroom. There's minimal characters in there. It's like a dead body in the middle and two people. I love those sort of films that are minimal. So films like Buried with Ryan Reynolds, or Open Water, the shark thing, which freaked the hell out of me. So much so I've only ever seen it once. And so we're going to be doing Saw 1. So I've seen Saw 1, Saw 2, Saw 3, Saw 4. I think I bailed out partway through Saw 5 because it just got so blood and gutsy. I'm like, it didn't put me off, but I thought, well, what am I doing? Got kind of better things to do than just watch this. So I bailed out of that one. I did then jump back into the Saw franchise when Spiral from the Book of Saw came out, and I really enjoyed that one. So I'm kind of hit and miss with the Saw films. There's a few I've not seen. There's a few I have, but it's been a few years since I've seen the first Saw. So we are quite looking forward to watching that. And this week I have watched Escape from New York, which is an absolute classic. It's one of my favourite, probably the favourite John Carpenter film, to be honest. And I've also watched Escape from Los Angeles. Now, I've seen both those films lots of times. I watched Escape from Los Angeles first this week, and then we watched Escape from New York a couple of days ago. To be fair, it doesn't really matter what order you watch those films in. If you've seen them before, they're fine. New York is great. Los Angeles is not so great, but it's not terrible either. It's just great to see Snake Plissken back and to hear the Shirley Walker, John Carpenter score, Pam Grier and Bruce Campbell and Steve Buscemi. And so it's stupid fun, is Escape from LA. And who can't smile and also shake your head when Snake Plissken hits that with the basketball. Apparently that was a real shot as well. I'd like to know more about whether that was actually a real shot, but I've read that was actually a genuine shot. Or maybe I'm thinking of Alien Resurrection when Sigourney Weaver just chucks the ball over her head and it goes in. I would suspect that's probably a real shot because that was more obtainable than the Snake Plissken one where he launches it from one end, one-handed, and it goes in the basket. So that I suspect some weird fancy trickery has gone on there by John Carpenter and his team. If anybody knows the answer to that, whether either of the basketball shots are real, do leave a comment or let me know or tweet at me or whatever. Rewatched Heathers, the Christian Slater, Winona Ryder film, which I haven't seen since probably the mid-90s. I did see it when it came out on VHS. I like it. Christian Slater's on full Jack Nicholson form. And it's like the tail end of it's like the anti-John Hughes film, I guess. But that was pretty cool. I've watched a screener disc of Malcolm X. Malcolm X, a screener disc. That film came out in the 90s. It did. But Studio Canal have got a 4K remaster of it coming out. And I was lucky enough to get a 4K screener disc of that. So I sat down and watched that. Not the shortest film in the world. So if you're going to watch Malcolm X, I mean, I'm talking to you now about 9:30 at night. You maybe not want to put Malcolm X on at 9:30 at night. It's a 3 hour and 20-minute movie. Yeah, that's hefty, like 200 minutes. It's good. It doesn't seem like 200 minutes, so the pacing's pretty good. But it is still 3 hours and 20 minutes, whether it seems like 3 hours and 20 minutes. But it's one of Denzel Washington's finest performances, and considering the amount of performances that guy's done in his career, you know, that's heavy praise. But there was a lot of faces in Malcolm X. Michael Imperiano was in there, Peter Boyle, Angela Bassett, Angelica Houston, Angela Bassett was in there, and Spike Lee playing one of Malcolm's mates. And I'm a bit hit and miss with Spike Lee. I like a lot of his films. I like Do the Right Thing is amazing. I like Summer of Sam. The Five Bloods is fantastic. But some of his other films I'm a little bit, I don't know, hit and miss with. But Malcolm X is a cracker film. It looks really good on 4K as well. Some scenes don't look as good as others, but it's that's the thing with 4K masters. They can be hit and miss, I think. And I think it depends on the type of film. If you're watching something like, Casino is an amazing 4K. Blade Runner is an absolute stunning. I have the Blade Runner 4K in this monster box set that I have here, and the 4K remastering of that is fantastic. So they are kind of hit and miss. But these films were never shot in 4K as far as I know back in the 90s. I don't think 4K was a thing, was it? Neil Johnson would know. And so they remastered them the way they remastered them. It looks a damn sight better than it did on the VHS when I watched it back in the day. Obviously now it's widescreen, so that's amazing. I get to see the whole picture. So yeah, that's coming out. I think it's like August. I should have had a date when that was coming out, but that's coming out soon. So if you're a 4K collector, then pick that up. Special features wise on the disc, pretty poor special features. I would like to have had a commentary, because obviously the subject matter and the fact Spike Lee and the fact it's an epic film. It's a historical film, but there's no commentary on it. The only extra features that you get on the disc are 20 minutes of deleted scenes, which are pretty good because they're introduced and explained by Spike Lee. So you've got about 20 minutes worth of stuff there, but I don't know if it's worth an upgrade. I think if you were going to pick up Malcolm X because you wanted it and you just didn't have it, then that's probably the best version you can get. But if you've already got a Blu-ray or a DVD of it and you only watch it every so often, who knows? It's up to you. See how much it costs. I don't know. But yeah, special features would have swung it for me a bit more had there been like historical documentaries and behind the scenes making ofs and all that sort of stuff. But sadly, there is none. I've also watched The First Omen, which I chatted briefly with Stu Miller about earlier on today. The First Omen it's one of those confusing titles because you went, oh, what's The First Omen? You're like, oh yeah, I saw that as a kid. You're like, no, the new one, the one that's come out. No, the 1976 one. No, confusing. It's like The First Purge. Come on, give me a break. Good film. Confusing title when you're having a conversation with somebody. The First Omen is a prequel to the 1976 Richard Donner Omen. So thankfully not that god-awful remake. It works well. It's set a few years before the Richard Donner film, and it is, I don't want to give too much away, but it's how Damien comes to pass, shall we say. So it's about Damien's mum. Let's just go with that. So it does have the character of Father Brennan in it, who's played by Patrick McGowan, and he's the one with the spike. So there's a younger version of him, slightly younger version of him in The First Omen. But if you do like the Richard Donner one, then I would check out The First Omen. It has that feel to it. It feels like it fits with the Richard Donner film, which is pretty good. I watched a film called Jungle on ITVX, which is a free platform here in the UK. You can actually pay $5.99 and you get the ad-free version. But or you can watch them for free with ads. Jungle is a 2017 film starring Daniel Radcliffe. Yes, he of Harry Potter fame. And I quite like Daniel Radcliffe because he makes the weirdest of choices when it comes to films. Very strange choices. And the film Jungle, which I didn't know that it was based on a true story. He is backpacking through, I think it's South America, and he bumps into a guide who says, hey, for a few dollars, whatever, I'll take you into a proper jungle hike. So he and 3 other mates, they all go off hiking into the jungle. Things go wrong, and poor old Daniel Radcliffe ends up being stuck in the jungle for over 2 weeks. Let's say that. Grim film, amazing film. Daniel Radcliffe is fantastic in it. It's a really gnarly film. At one point, there's a scene where he pulls a worm out of his head. That's pretty gross, Daniel. What's the matter with you? But that's a really good film. The other film I nearly watched was Imperium, which is also a Daniel Radcliffe film, but I suspect I've seen that one before. I just couldn't remember it, or I couldn't remember whether I'd seen it. So I thought, you know what? I know I've not seen Jungle, so I'm going to watch Jungle. Next film I watched was one called Texas Twister, starring Jamie Bernadette. Now, you look at the poster, and there's like somebody looking up a tornado, Twister, and then you hear the name, Texas Twister, and it's like, I don't know what sort of film this is. It's about twisters, because Twister's coming out this summer, and it's tornadoes, so let's tie in with that. No, it's not that sort of film, and that's not a bad thing. I actually preferred the fact that Texas Twister wasn't a Roland Emmerich type disaster movie. It was in fact a film about a husband, a wife, and a daughter who all live in this small town. It's like sort of Bible country. Well, Texas, obviously. Duh, it's been one of them days. So they live in Texas, and they're very religious. John Schneider from Dukes of Hazzard plays the pastor. And the husband basically gets into his head. He keeps having these visions that a big tornado / twister is going to flatten his house, kill his family, and they're all going to be reunited with their recently deceased son, who's obviously no longer there. And the film is more about this guy's mental collapse. I mean, he really believes that a twister is going to come and reunite him with his deceased child. The wife, played by Jamie Bernadette, she's like, this guy's losing his mind. I need to protect my daughter. I need to protect myself. I need to try and look after my husband. So it's more about the collapse of a family. And it was all the better for it. Because this film wasn't like a $200 million disaster movie, like Moonfall, classic. It was a small indie film that obviously had limited budget, limited location, and limited actors and stuff like that, or the amounts of cast. And it works for it. I prefer, the worst thing about the film is the poster and the title. Because if you can get past that it's not a disaster movie, you're going to discover a lovely little gem of a movie. And I've been a fan of Jamie Bernadette's for a few years. I think one of the most high-profile films that she's been in was the I Spit on Your Grave, Deja Vu, which was one of the most recent ones that I'd seen. And so she pops up in films now and again. I'm like, I'll check it out. And Texas Twister was one of those. I'm like, let's see what she's doing now. And gem of a movie. So I would check out Texas Twister. The final film I watched is The Locksmith, which it's about a locksmith, so it does have the proper title that fits with the plot, and stars Ryan Philippe, who gets out of prison, and he was a safecracker and a burglar, and he goes back to work in a garage owned by Ving Rhames, who sort of looked after him before he went into prison and is now looking after him when he comes out of prison. The character that Ryan Philippe plays wants to stay on the straight and narrow because he wants to put his family back together. He's got a child, he's got an ex-partner, and he wants to really make it work with them. However, the criminal underworld, they've got other plans for Ryan Philippe, and they sort of manipulate him, and Ryan Philippe, unfortunately, goes back to the dark side and gets involved in stuff he should not get involved in. I really enjoyed it. It's the first Ryan Philippe film I think I've seen for quite a few years. I can't remember the last thing that I saw Ryan in. There's obviously something since Cruel Intentions, but I've not seen him around. Maybe he went to prison. I don't know. The film was written by Joe Russo and Chris Lamont, and I'm a fan of those two. I've seen quite a few things that they've been involved with over the years, so they are screenwriters to watch out for. And if you do see films that they're involved in, check them out, because they're a couple of interesting, talented guys. So I'd recommend The Locksmith. TV wise, I've signed up for the cheap Paramount Plus subscription of £2.31 per month for the next 3 months, and so I thought I'm going to jump into the world of Yellowstone. I knew what Yellowstone is. I know it's a Kevin Costner project, and I thought I'd check it out and see what all the fuss was about. I finished season 1, 9 episodes. The first episode is an hour and a half, so I suppose it's the length of 10 episodes, I guess, but it is set in modern days, and it is, how do you pitch Yellowstone? It's about, Kevin Costner is the patriarch of a big ranching area. He owns tons of land. He owns Yellowstone. Doesn't seem like a squeaky clean character, to be fair. He's got children, so it's a bit like Succession in that regard. A lot of kids are kissing their daddy's arse to try and, oh, we want to be next and we want to take over. So it's kind of, it has that thing to it, but set in the ranching world. I was enjoying Yellowstone, still am. Finished season 1. I was enjoying it, and whenever I would see people talking about it, they would be like, oh my God, it's amazing. It's so good, such a good show. And I wasn't quite there. I was enjoying it. I was liking it. But I wasn't like, I don't quite get why people are saying this is amazing, even though I'm enjoying it and I'm looking forward to watching the next episode. And I remember sitting there watching episode 7. So I put episode 7 on. And I'm like, I don't quite get, oh, that's what. And then things happen in episode 7 and episode 8 and episode 9. And it's like, okay, now I get it. So it's not a slow burner. I mean, you're not going to put episode 1 on and go, ugh, a little bit bored. It's a good show, but I didn't quite get the, wow, this is an amazing series until I'd settled into the characters. There's one character in it. She's super annoying. But it's good. I'm enjoying it. I was going to plow straight into season 2 because I've got 3 months of Paramount Plus and I've got quite a few shows on there that I want to get through. But I decided to give another show a go, which is The Mayor of Kingstown, which is, weirdly enough, another Taylor Sheridan thing. So Taylor Sheridan seems to just write everything on Paramount. He's written 1883, 1923, Yellowstone, Tulsa King, Mayor of Kingstown. So Taylor Sheridan is a busy guy, it seems. Mayor of Kingstown, I'm not into it as much as Yellowstone. It's a different show. This one stars Jeremy Renner, and I don't know if he works for a prison, but he works with the local prisons, and he seems to do a lot of running around and wheeling dealing and, you know, backroom payoffs and all that sort of stuff, and gets involved in just crazy dodgy dealings. I don't quite know who he works for though. Does he work for himself? I don't quite know how he manages to get away with doing all this stuff in prison. Maybe I missed a couple of minutes on the first episode that explained that part, but life's too short to go back and watch a full episode again. I'll probably catch up at some point. I'm now 2 episodes into The Mayor of Kingstown, and I'm liking it. It's okay. But it's I'm enjoying Paramount. I like Paramount Plus. It's a good channel. It's not got the biggest library in the world, but the stuff that it's got on there, The Godfather, it's got all these Star Treks on there. It's all the South Parks are on there. I watched the Human Centipede South Park episode the other day. That was different, really. It's different. So Yellowstone, Mayor of Kingstown. The only other TV show I'm watching is probably the most divisive TV show that's on TV at the minute. It's on for another 3 weeks, and that is, or 2 weeks. Is it 3 weeks? 7, 8, 9. 7, 8. 2 weeks. Right, I can't count. The Acolyte, Star Wars. Interesting show. Up till and including last week, which I think was episode 6. So it's 3 weeks. 6, 7, 8. Fuck knows. Whatever. So it'll be finished by the end of July. I think there's 8 episodes and we've got number 7 and 8. So there we go. That was a longer solution than it needed to be. I'm enjoying The Acolyte. I think it's fine. It's not the best Star Wars has ever been. It's not the worst that Star Wars has ever been. But there is some Star Wars I've not seen. I've not seen Ahsoka. But I'll probably watch that. But I quite like The Acolyte. I think it's fine. I'm not trying to burn it to the ground like a lot of people seem to be. Some people get way too mad at shit. It's like if you watch a film or you watch a TV show and you don't like it, just stop watching it. It's not difficult. This is something I've said so much. It's like if you don't like something, just don't worry about it. You don't have to go, I need to go to my keyboard to tell a bunch of strangers how much I hate this show and how much it's murdering my childhood. If you don't like it, just don't watch it. You know, who cares, really? If you don't like something, it's fine. I watch stuff all the time that I don't like. Well, not all the time, because I choose wisely. But I think The Acolyte's fine. I did a video on the YouTube channel, which part of that was an experiment just to see if doing one of these snarky titled, got an itchy nose, sorry about that. If one of these snarky titled videos actually gets scooped up by the algorithm and will go through the roof. Spoiler, it didn't. It did okay numbers wise. So I did a video called Major Mistakes the Acolyte is Making. And for those of you who've watched the video, you know it's not me going, this sucks, and how dare they have women in the roles, and oh no, Jedis aren't women, and it's not all that silliness. It's just things like the episodes are too short, because they are 26 minutes each week for a Star Wars show. It's too short. That's not ideal. I think they should have dropped this all in one go, because the negative word of mouth is probably not doing a right lot of good. Although, to be fair, if you look at the viewing figures, they're pretty high. So I think it's just all these little gobshites on Twitter or on Facebook that are just getting a little, nappies in a twist over a show that, let's face it, I mean, Star Wars is for adults, but it's kind of not. It's just, I was 7 years old when I watched the first Star Wars. I was 9 years old when I watched the second one, and I was 12 years. See, I can do maths. I was 12 years old when I watched Return of the Jedi. So they were made for kids, but adults were in the audience. It's kind of like Universal. It's like Simpsons. Simpsons is a kid show, but it's also made for adults. Pixar, made for kids, also for adults. Star Wars, The Acolyte, bit of both. But some of the nasty feedback for The Acolyte, it's just, I think you just got to laugh at it. You just got to look at it and go, if you're that miserable when you're watching something, you get that angry at a TV show that you have no financial stake in, Jesus, you got bigger problems than a less than perfect episode of The Acolyte. I don't know if I probably will finish it, but I don't know if I'll finish it I don't know if I'm still going to stick in with it week to week. I probably will, because to be fair, it's only going to take 27 minutes out of my Wednesday. And I do have Disney Plus, but it's not the best. It's not the worst. I'm just happy we get more Star Wars. It's never good. People keep going, it's not as good as... No, it's not. It's not as good as Rogue One or The Force Awakens or Return of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars project of any kind. It's not going to be as good as the original trilogy, is it? Because you were kids when you first saw the original trilogy. Now you're adults. And people just watch stuff through a magnifying glass. It's like crazy. But so I watched The Acolyte. I'm up to date on The Acolyte. One of the shows I want to go into, which I'll probably just watch pretty fast before this 3-month trial of Disney Plus, which I'm getting for £2.40 a month. So I'm scooping up these cheapy deals for these streaming platforms, is season 3 of The Bear. Not a comedy. So anybody who's seen the Golden Globes nominating this thing for a comedy, no, it's not a comedy at all. It's a heavy drama, but it's fantastic. I've seen the first 2 seasons. The full season 3 has dropped onto Disney Plus, and so I will probably check that out at some point. I'm not quite sure what to do. I'll probably carry on with The Mayor of Kingstown, but yeah, there's too much stuff to watch. There is too much. Behind me here, see this little, who am I kidding? This box set it's got 30 Blu-rays in it. All right, from Warner Brothers, all 4K renders. 30. That's near enough a film a week with 3 months off. See, doing maths again. And so I've got so many films in my house that I'll never get through. For anybody who wants to see what's in that box set, I did a video, by the way, which is pretty cool. You'll see it. If you just do a search on the YouTube thing for Warner 4K, you'll see what's in that sucker. It's pretty impressive. But I've run out of box sets. So I'm at the point now where, with regards to the box sets, I've got some like triple disc sets that I've got, but they're not as impressive as like this Clint Eastwood one or the Hammer House horror big box set thing. But I need stuff to just tinker around with and faff with and whatnot, which is why I'm doing all the book things on the old YouTube. So I think that's pretty much it. Oh, I am on the PlayStation 5. I finished a game. I did. This is the first game I've finished in probably a year. And I finished it as in I finished the storyline campaign of the first Spider-Man, which was a really, really good game. And I kind of made a bit of a cock-up, though, because I'm cancelling my PS Plus in August. And I'd seen online that you lose your cloud storage if you don't have PS Plus. So I'm like, oh crap, I'll lose all my save games. Oh no. So I better download them. So I downloaded them all. And then I went back into Spider-Man, having already finished the storyline, but I thought there's a couple of achievements or a couple of trophies that I want to get. And my new save game wasn't there anymore. It seems by downloading the cloud ones onto my console, I've overwritten the save game. So whatever. So I finished Spider-Man, and I'm now replaying Batman Arkham Asylum, which I picked up Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight for the total cost of £6. I own those games, so I don't need your PS Plus. I don't really play online games much. I don't really play too many games because I'm too busy watching films or podcasting or whatever. All these various things that I've rattled on about for the past 48 minutes. I would like to play more games. I just don't. You know, maybe I should move a console up here or something and just play. But that takes me away from movie watching. So I finished the game. I'm playing some new ones. And I think that's pretty much it. That's like a whole catch up of what I've been up to this week, what I'm going to be up to this coming week. I've got a courtesy of the wonderful Neil Johnson. So I'm actually here talking to you, and Neil Johnson is premiering another film on his YouTube channel, so Empire Motion Pictures. Every Sunday he's been putting up a new movie, one of his sci-fi epics, so they're worth checking out. He has arranged for me to receive a GoPro camera. So I've never owned a GoPro before, so I'm looking forward to experimenting with one of those. I did forget one of the other things that I'd been doing, not so much this week, but in previous weeks, but it does fall into what I've been up to today, is podcast co-host, my friend, filmmaker, writer, Fraser Cole, and big Ghostbusters fan. He's been sharing these little featurettes of the behind-the-scenes footage of his film Faithful, which Faithful is not out yet, but the featurettes are coming out just to give people a taster. And it was yours truly who edited all the featurettes. Fraser sent me a whole truckload. Wasn't actually a truckload, it just feels like a truckload. 500 gig, just to say, of just raw footage that was shot behind. And Fraser very kindly said to me, he's like, have at it. Just make me some featurettes. And so I'd made him a total of 17 so far, little featurettes, all about the cast and the crew and little interviews and all that sort of stuff. So he started sharing one of those periodically. So it's quite weird, nice, charming, the work that I've done editing these things together and crafting these little storylines out of these featurettes. It's now going out into the world. And the one that went out today, within, only a small handful of hours, it had like 2,000 views already. So I'm quite proud of those little featurettes, and I'm very appreciative that Fraser let me tackle it. So if anybody needs any featurettes editing, let me know. I need a new pair of shoes. So I've been doing that, and it's got me thinking, because Fraser and I might be heading off to London next May to reunite at a Comic-Con, MCM Comic-Con in London. Fraser's hoping to get Faithful shown there. He's asked me if he's able to swing it. Would I panel host for him again? And I've always had fun panel hosting for Fraser. I've done it 3 times. Once in Nottingham, once in London, and then once in Wales for Sci-Fi Wales. And I've always enjoyed just getting on a stage and microphone in hand without a clue of what I'm going to say, a bit like this podcast with no maths, and just talking. And so that may be a thing. And I'm now starting to get it into my head that I might do a follow-up to my experience in Comic-Con documentary. It's something I've been wanting to do for a little while anyway, because the first one that I shot and edited and put together and starred in and everything, it's got more cameos than I've ever seen in my entire life. It was 2017. A lot's changed in 7 years. There was a pandemic, in case nobody noticed. And I've been wanting to get back to a Comic-Con because I've seen the way they've changed. In my opinion, not for the better, because the prices have gone through the roof. The whole, right, next. Nope, you can't do that. You can't do this. Nope, you can't do that. Has been on the rise. And yet I remember, you go back and watch this Experience in Comic-Con documentary that I did. I was walking up to people and chatting with Robert Llewellyn and Virginia Hayne, R.J. Mitty from Breaking Bad, and stood like 3 feet away from Stan Lee and all that sort of stuff. Those days just don't seem to be a thing anymore, which is a huge shame. And so I want to go back to some Comic-Cons over the next 12 months with my cameras and just do an Experience of Comic-Con 2 post-pandemic type thing, just to see how much it's changed. Hopefully it hasn't changed, but from what I see online with the prices and the way that people are shepherded around, and the fact that the cost of a photograph with somebody, I'm not talking a professional photo shoot, I'm talking a selfie, is the same as an autograph, and the autograph prices are into 3 figures. That's absolute insanity for people that just don't have that sort of money, and that includes me. I was chatting to Fraser last night on Facebook, and I said I remember the days when I could go to the one in Birmingham and go down there with like 100 quid, 150 pound in my pocket, and then just come back with like 5 signatures, a bunch of photos, and a lot of stories. Now forget it. You go down with 150 pound, you're coming back with 1 signature if you're lucky, and that's if you choose wisely. You're not coming back with Chuty Gatway's signature, because that would, I think actually he's 125 pounds, so that's probably a bad example, but even 125 pounds is a lot of money for a signature. But people seem to pay it, which I don't quite get, but we live in weird times, which is why an experience in Comic-Con 2 would be an interesting idea. So that's pondering in my brain. I do want to finish the Mimi short film or the documentary so that I can then release that, and then that's off my desk, and I'll put that down to experience, and then I can possibly crowdfund for experience in Comic-Con 2. So that's in my plans. And I think that's pretty much it. I think I've rattled on for like 50 odd minutes. That's bored you enough, hasn't it, people? Thank you to Electric Circus Entertainment for popping up in the chat, by the way. It's nice to see the chat thing works. So I'm quite impressed with that. I figure the longer I do these things, the more likely people will go, who's that funny talking dude that appears on Sunday night? I'll go jump in his chat. But for now, I think of these as solo podcasts. So I don't mind if there's nobody in the chat box. This is just a way of me testing the software to see if it works. My next stage will be seeing if I can go live with a guest at the same time, but that's further down the line. I have Skype for that, and I put nice little graphics and stuff in. So, but I hope the weekend's been really nice to you all, and I'd shout out to Chris and Stu and Chloe for joining me on the podcast over the past week or so. I'm probably due another catch up with the wonderful John Fouts at some point where we can chat about things. I'm very happy that Beverly Hills Cop 4 came out and that I enjoyed it and it was fun. So watch Axel Foley if you like that sort of thing. I love that sort of thing. Probably the best one since 2. Yeah, best one since 2. I like number 2 more than 1. So it's 2, 1, 4, 3. Fine. But they're all okay. But I hope the weekend's good to you all, or has been. I hope that the week ahead is also wonderful for you too, whatever you get up to. And I'm guessing people who are watching this video are already subscribed to the channel anyway. But you know what? If you're not, can you please subscribe? Would be nice. It's all movie related content, so you know you'll enjoy it, I promise. But take care, and may July give you things that you wish.